Thank you. Okay, but I don't want to. I want to see the presentation, not me. It's like Inception, like me, on me, on me, on me, on me. So just a view. Thanks, Nicole. Okay. Awesome. It's a very, very flattering view from here. Everybody line for sure. All right, welcome. Everybody raise, I'm gonna be like my pastor in church. Y'all raise your hands, first time here, first timer. Welcome. We're excited to have y'all. We've had this space for a little bit, but we're still working on signage and getting everything. But I'm one of those that if I have an idea, let's just take off and run with it, because no matter how much you plan or how much you put into something, you're gonna work out the kinks as you go along anyway. So I'd rather hit the ground running in 2025 because it's going to be an outstanding year. I don't know if y'all knew that. We are willing it to happen. We are manifesting it to happen. And honestly, all the data is saying that it's going to happen. I just left a Triangle Business Journal event this morning in Clayton, and somebody tried to raise their hand and be like, "Was the economic forecast being so gloomy so far this year?" And then we're really trying to goad the speakers into like talking about how we're going to overcome it. And they were like, yeah, there's already been a lot that's happened in January, but look at how well we're doing in the midst of all of that. So yes, unfortunately, there's been a lot that's gone on economically, globally, in our world. But the one thing that does not change, and coming from somebody who got their license just before the recession, which was a major ordeal, that was in an economic downfall, let me tell you. You can if you're willing to outwork people, you will be successful all day long, all day, every day. So I'm excited to teach on this. If you don't know, I am very passionate about all things new construction. Quick spiel about me: got my license when I was 23 years old, working for a custom home builder. I did everything what I call from concept to closing. So I thought of the plan, we put it on the lot, I took it to permitting. These are my babies. I watched them grow and turn into a beautiful house, and then turn the keys over to their new homeowner. It was like watching them just go out into the world. So I'm very passionate about it. I'm going to talk about a lot because we're looking at this from two different viewpoints, from working with buyers in new construction and working with sellers in new construction. But this is an open forum. At any time, raise your hand, stop me. If you're having the question, I can just about guarantee you somebody else in this room is having that question. So I am regurgitating this presentation. I also teach with the Residential Real Estate Council. If you're not a member of that, you can join that to get a part of your accredited buyer representation. It's a kind of a part of that designation. But joining this council is so good. There's people like me who teach every week with the Real Estate Council, and it's through NAR. So this is something that I teach. I do webinars for them across the country several times a year. So that's why you see their branding and everything, because it looks better than the presentation that I sent them. They put it on all their stuff, and I was like, well, that's prettier. So how to master new construction listings and sales. So again, just a little bit about me. I'm happy to share this presentation afterwards with anybody who wants it. I pretty much just went over this. For anybody in the room who does not know, I do love Fayetteville. I used to come train down here. I was in the Army. I was in the Army National Guard, worked for headquarters up in Raleigh, but came to Fort Bragg because I was a medic, and essentially that's kind of like a paramedic. And I would come down to Fort Bragg to train their essentially first responders. So got to love this market. I live in Benson, so I just hop on 95 and I'm 35 minutes away. So just a little bit about me and why we're passionate about growing the REal School in Fayetteville. We're growing our market presence in Fayetteville, and we love the people down here, the culture, the military families, just all of it. So who here is represented a buyer on new construction? And let me add a caveat that custom built from the ground up. Who's done that before? Custom built from the ground up. Or if you've worked with a national builder where they have to go to the design center, but you start them from the inception of, I want to build my dream home. So when you're having these initial conversations and they want to build their dream home, you learn very quickly that they have really big ideas, a lot of them, and it is unfortunately, our job to rein some of that in. We know that this process can be very, very daunting, very overwhelming. And it's our job to try to keep them on track and on pace, because time is money in new construction. That is one of the biggest things that everyone needs to realize is time is money. Things are being paid for, whether anybody's getting paid or not, things are costing. So, some of the biggest things to know about your buyer's financial situation that are really critical. And I'm just going to start with kind of the lead calls that we get. We get a call on a tract of land that we have listed, and their first thing is, I want to build a custom home. Great, we can help with that. We have builders we work with. I love the whole matchmaking process of the builder I'll talk about. But one of the biggest questions, and let's just imagine this land costs $200,000. So just like any lead qualification call, I'm going to talk to them about what their hopes and dreams and all the things are, and then have the conversation, what's your budget? And if they say my budget's 500,000, what do I immediately need to know when they just called me on a $200,000 piece of land? It's going to be really hard to build anything for $300,000. Especially if they're building on a 200, we've already got an upside down situation where it's very land heavy, which is what our lenders in the room like to call it, pointing to Lexi. It makes banks very nervous when something's very land heavy. You can't repossess land at the same value as you can a house and turn around and sell it. So just go, I'm big about knowing the why behind things, because buyers don't understand that. To them, they don't understand that they only want their land costs to be anywhere from 20 to 30% of their total value, not 50%, not 45%. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, especially now with barndominiums being so popular. That is a little bit of the variable there that we're seeing, because most people that are building barndominiums, it's because they have pieces of land, they have equipment, it's more important that they have storage for their equipment than it is how much space they're living in, which again, this is why everybody wants to build what makes sense for them. So what is their total budget, and what kind of loan type are they approved for? That's another thing. A lot of people think, I went online to Rocket Mortgage and they said I can afford $500,000. Okay, well, let me back you up there, because that just changed when you said you want a custom build. Because when you want a custom build, now we have to talk about deposits and the difference in a deposit on just walking into a neighborhood and buying a spec home. Because nobody is going to take out construction loans, which we'll talk about all the different types of financing too. But a builder is not just going to take $1,000 from you to turn around and build you a $400,000 house, because they're on the hook for all 400. And so that $1,000's not going to get them very far. So we obviously want to talk to our buyers in a more positive way than I may be saying it to you guys, but it's important that we're educating them on why it is that way. So the different ways to finance a custom build. This is interesting too, because a lot of people will call, and we work with a lot of builders, and they'll call, how much per square foot does it cost to build, over in Clayton? And I'm like, well, are you building a vinyl home, or are you building a brick home? Is it gonna be on a slab? Is it gonna be our crawl space? Just those two questions I ask are a difference of about $80,000 depending on the size of the house. So that's not an easy answer. It's just what's price per square foot. And that's what buyers feel like they know just enough. They know how to look at a price per square foot of a house. And so we just had this conversation with a new construction. We were negotiating. The buyer was like, used to pay over this price per square foot. And we couldn't help her understand that the house she was building was a small 1,300 square foot house, and she was comparing it to the price per square foot house of a 2,800 square foot house. Square footage is like buying in bulk, but there's still the same amount of bathrooms that had to go in it, the same amount, of that had to have a kitchen with cabinets, and so many variables that you can't change. So the price per square foot is not a good measuring stick in any shape, form, or fashion. So one of the ways that we do is called cost plus. So we'll sit down with the builder, and this is one of the first ways I was trained. The builder I worked for was a commercial contractor, and you see this a lot. It's literally like, the framing package costs this. This is going to cost this. And they go down a spreadsheet showing you what everything is going to cost based on what you've told them you want to put in the house. Now, there's always going to be some allowances, and for instance, they'll say you have a $20,000 allowance for cabinets in your kitchen. If you go over, then you're paying the difference when you go to the cabinet supplier. If you go under, we're going to subtract that from here and keep going. And at the end, here's just like we charge our compensation fee to our clients, the builder's going to charge their fee to build this, and it's usually a percentage of the sale for the exact same reason we charge a percentage. And so they put that on in the bottom. So that's your cost. And then plus, the plus means plus what they're charging you to put the deal together. Construction to perm. So that, well, let me back up a little bit. With cost plus, what we typically see in that situation is it's the way the builder prices the home, but it's sometimes this is what a buyer will use when they're looking at paying cash for the build, because they like to see those checks and balances. They're writing every check, if you will. So with the construction to perm, this is where your buyer gets the financing. This is what we've seen just about everybody shift to be honest. When I first started, all the builders were doing builder financing because they got the better rates. They had the relationships. They did this, that, and the other. Now, since the recession, a lot of builders got stuck with a lot of houses. They had flipped, and now they want the buyer to get the loan. So what we typically see there is called a construction to perm loan. Perm meaning permanent. It's going to turn into a permanent mortgage. So the buyer is going to talk to the bank. They're going to get pre-qualified with the bank. The bank is going to want a lot of information about this builder. The builders do not love this, to be honest. Most of them that are used to it, especially your ones that do custom pre-sales all the time. And I say that it's important in the builder process to ask, do you do a lot of pre-sales? Because the builders who typically build spec houses and they're used to just putting it out there and waiting for somebody to come buy it, are not necessarily very fluent in the process of doing a pre-sale where somebody's literally going to call every day and say, what about this? How about this? Why is this way? So again, we'll talk about that when we get to kind of like the matchmaking with builders. But construction to perm, they're going to talk to their lender. They need to be prepared that most construction to perm programs are going to require 25% down, 20 to 25. Lexi, do y'all do construction to perm? What do you require for a down payment?
We do a once close. So it's 10% down, and you do an FHA.
That's fantastic.
But you just close one time. So it's going to be the price of the based on what's the construction period. You have a 6, 9, and 12.
Great. Second question, I'll just go ahead and chat or hook on to that with the one time close. Hold on, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. They put down, can you use the land as part of their deposit, their down payment? That was
if they have owned it for more than 6 months.
Perfect. So that is very good to know. I did not know that. The lowest amount I've seen is 5%, and it's with a bank that I don't care to use, so I don't really promote them. To be honest. So 10% is really great, and the fact that you can do FHA for 3.5. So that's great to know. One caveat to also know, because I got into this situation just 2 years ago, and the agent was very experienced. If the buyer is doing a construction to perm, the buyer has to own the land. So we had a situation, we went to contract, my builder owned the lot in a subdivision, but he wanted them to get the construction to perm loan, and the bank would not do it. And we could not make the agent and the buyer understand, for the bank to loan on your house and not on the land, essentially they literally own sticks and bricks. They can't, those sticks and bricks are not worth anything until they're put together. And so, they terminated and were mad at everybody, but it was kind of like, it was my fault for assuming the buyer's agent knew this going into it, and that was going to be the plan. And then the builder didn't want to just sign the lot over. It's a long story, but anyway, just so you know, if the buyer is doing construction to perm, the buyer must own the land and must have owned the land for 6 months if they want it to be used towards their down payment or the percentage.
So you say 6, 9, and 12 months. So let's say that they do the 9-month one, and then there is delays in construction, and it ends up it's going to be 10 or 11 months. What happens to the buyer's money at that point?
Lock extensions.
Okay.
Essentially, the fees are just going to increase.
So just your rate lock extension, and no other fees are accrued with that.
There may be some other stuff, sort of like extension, like admin type of fees. I'd have to look into that. We haven't had anyone go over personally, but I can look into that and get back to you. But they won't lose their loan.
Right.
We're gonna keep extending it until we can. If it goes past 12 months, if we did like a 6-month and it goes past 12 months, probably gonna have to restart from scratch. I would think the loan. But yes, lock extension is gonna be the biggest impact.
Good to know. LaShonda?
I was gonna ask about, administration's occurring as far as VA buyers. I actually had administration occurring with VA buyers and which was so difficult, and I'm just wondering if that is just what it is, because I have some more clients that are, I think, trying to go that way and they're already used to it. And I'm praying that it's not as many hurdles and
So again, this goes back to how organized is everyone, and then let's see the lender can say that it seems like it's a lot because they have to have so much information, and again, if you understand the why behind it, you know, with VA, you've got their eligibility for one that we've got to play a part in, and then you've got to make sure the builder is VA certified to build a VA loan, a home that the VA will loan on, because remember, VA is insuring all these loans on the back end. So there's the bank and then there's VA. And so everybody tied to it wants to make sure we got a good little package here. If we have to repossess, if we have to foreclose, if we have something that is tangible to get their money back, for lack of a better word. That's the why behind it. So the short answer is yes, more than likely, but it all depends, just like with any of your other buyers. If they are organized and they're a W-2 employee and they have this and they have this and they stay on top of their checking account, when the lender asks them for all this, it's no, all they gotta do is go print off their statement and shoot it. But if they're self-employed like me and they got receipts and shoe boxes and 7 different LLCs and entities, and it makes everything that much more difficult. Lexi, anything to add to that?
Just that we don't even do VA construction loans because there's something about it where you're not allowed to charge a veteran interim interest, like a whole thing, so it could be that. They were just short, it's some sort of like thing going on where it's not actually VA, there's new VA, there's something like that. We've been trying to work on a VA construction product for a long time, we don't have it done yet, but normally. They would just have to go with like an FHA or VA or conditional, the construction part, and then like convert it into VA. It's typically what we do, but yeah, there's a lot of like legalities and problems when it comes to VA construction.
And again, it's a double-edged sword. The VA is trying to look out for the veteran, which we appreciate. They create that red tape for that reason, to look out for them, but it does create an extra level of angst, I guess, for everybody else in the transaction. Yes, ma'am.
So the question for Lexi,
Mhm.
you're saying that your loan will be 6, 9, 12, correct?
So that's based on the construction period, it's gonna be interest only for the buyer during that time. While the home is being built, but we close up front, so we close within like a normal 30-day period, construction starts after we close, that's when the builder starts taking the draws. So if the builder says, I can do it in 6 months, we'll do a 6 month. And then it automatically converts into that permanent, once that home is complete, we've done all our final inspections and everything.
So are you locking that mortgage rate this entire time?
It's lots like before we close first one, and then it's interest only, so it's like prime +2, so it's gonna probably be like 9 or 10% when the interest only, but it's only based on what's being drawn. Is what's being charged interest, and then it'll convert automatically once the home's done into whatever rate we locked up for.
And I'm gonna dumb this down for a little bit, for everyone, because it took me a long time to understand like the draws and there's draw schedules and all of this. So essentially, the builder, the bank, and the buyer have to all be on the same page that checks will be issued to the builder so he can pay subs, so he can pay himself as he's going through this process at certain, there's typical inspections that have to happen. So the actual lending institution sends an inspector out to make sure that the framing is done, the foundation's done. As they hit different earmarks in the construction process, they're going to check off and say, yep, okay, now you can get a draw for the next step. So that's what they're called draws, but it's essentially everybody being in agreement that the builder can get paid for this segment of construction, and then we move on to the next. So I may say a couple words like impervious surface, things like that. I didn't know those were things for like my first 2 years in real estate. If I say any words like that, I'm happy to talk in more detail, because again, I promise I for a long time I didn't know what a lot of these terms were, especially when you get into the world of new construction and the financing side of that. And then builder financing, again, some builders will do this, but this is typically going to require a substantial deposit down from your buyer. So I see this a lot. For instance, we've got two lots in Benson, one of our custom builders owns, and we've got them marketed right now as a pre-sale opportunity for somebody to come in. They can put the lot under contract and build a pre-sale with this builder, and the builder will couple everything together and then turn around and sell it to them so they can just get a regular mortgage at the end of the day. And they're not having to do this construction to perm. They're going to have to get pre-qualified for the total amount that they determine the house will be, but they're not doing all the interim things that we've been talking about, the frustrating things with the construction to perm loans. That can be helped. But this builder's probably going to want 30% upfront in case these people back out, in case something happens, they lose their job, whatever. He now has this house that he has started building, and he's gonna hopefully be able to recoup.
I have a question.
Yep.
So, do the, or maybe this question for her, do the lenders, is the loan structured, a little more than what they figured the home would cost?
That's a great question. So typically there's contingencies, like most builders, and I hate that they use the same word contingency because it's completely different meaning than our word contingency, but it is in the event something else were to happen. So usually builders put a contingency in there of around 5%. Do you guys pad it, or do you go with what the contract says? 5%. So we all typically in the deal are kind of like, everybody knows we're working with 5%. But with some of the things that I'm going to show you, most of my clients come in within 1 to 2%, unless they just get crazy. They come in within 1 to 2% of our contract because I do so much homework with them on the front end. And this saves so much drama throughout the transaction. And I have been in these transactions where everybody feels like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. It's because we're not enough. Just like with every buyer, we need to slow them down and have a consultation and really make sure they know what they want. Because the entire time they're building, they're going to wear themselves out on Pinterest and house. And every day, then they're going to get mad when the builder wants to send them a change order because it's a change. And that's how budgets get blown by 20%, is because it was not enough conversation that happens on the front end. So here's my favorite thing. Which comes first? Do you need to find land, or do you need to find a builder? And how does this work? So I put your buyer agent hat on right now. So we're working with a buyer who calls in and they're like, I want to build. And you're like, great, let's talk about what this is going to look like. Where do you want to build? And they're like, I don't know. I want you to find me a piece of land. That's how a lot of our custom build conversations start. They don't know what exactly they want, but they just know they want to build it. And so we start looking for land for them. Well, it's not just as simple as looking for land. And Brick and I are going through this right now. We got a family who wants to build 2 properties. And they were thinking they could just buy 1 piece of land. I'm like, but we can't subdivide it if it's already been subdivided within the last 5 years. So I'm not going to go far down a land rabbit hole because I have a whole nother class just on land. But we need to be having these questions to make sure what their future use is going to be. This is what we're looking for on land. So some people just want an acre. They just want an acre out in the country. They can build their own thing. Great. You still need to have conversations about surveys, impervious surveys. What kind of utilities? Or is it going to be a well? If it's in a well, are you in a Gen X area? You see how these conversations just kind of continue down rabbit holes, but it's hard because most people feel like they can't start until they find the lot that they're going to build on. But a lot of times what they're going to build determines what kind of lot we need to be looking for. So this is why, like in the buyer consultation we had with this couple, when we sat down, it wasn't just them building, it was for their parents to build. And this was their budget just for land. So we know because their budget's so small, we really need to be looking for places that are on county water. We're not going to find what they're looking for on sewer, which is a whole nother conversation because they're from up north and didn't know they'd have to be on a septic tank to also be on land. So that's why I'm saying it's important that we have the whole conversation. So a sprawling range plan will require a wider lot. So this is why we're having the conversation. The ones I love too are the ones that are coming from up north, and they're like, you get into it, they want you to look for land, you find the perfect lot, and then they tell you they want a basement.
Yeah.
And you're like,
It's as common.
they go in the ground up north. We're going to go to Chicago tomorrow, and it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I pulled into the cul-de-sac. I can see the front of the houses. I can see the back of the houses. You walk out of their house, there's a patio, and I walk in and they're like, let's go to the basement. I'm like, how do you have a basement? Your backyard is flat, your front yard is flat. Where's the basement? And they opened the door and I'm like, y'all dug a hole in the earth. And that's where you started. And that's what people up north think you can do down here. But where are we? We're on the coast. We have sand, we have water very close underneath us. We can't just go straight down 30 feet and you're going to hit rock and water. So again, this is why you ask that question. So what kind of house are you thinking of building? If they're like a basement, I'm like, so we're going to be on a slope lot. We can do a walkout. But you see why, this is what I'm saying. It's not just that easy question. Yeah, I'll put you on a land search and we'll just go from there. 2-story plans offer more flexibility. Search location will also be important. Again, knowing how they're going to live. Or if they, like with this group, they don't want to be in an HOA, even though we found some really great options. We could get 2 lots beside each other, but there's a small HOA. They're like, absolutely not. I'm like, all right, we're back to the drawing board. So a couple things that you need to know, even if it is a random piece of land, you need to do a search to make sure there are no deed restrictions. I live on 14 acres. Around me, there was several small tracts of land. I listed one of those tracts of land. It was 2 acres. The people that sold it also were one of my neighbors. So they were like, I want to protect all of us that have custom built around each other. So I'm going to put deed restrictions. We learned about this in real estate school, but you don't see it a ton. Because it's just vacant land. So we put deed restrictions that it couldn't be a manufactured home. It had to be a minimum of this square footage so that we had like-kind houses around us. So make sure that you're looking for those things. Don't assume just because it's not in a neighborhood, but there's no restrictions on it. Impervious surface restrictions. So this tells you how much of the lot can be used by surfaces that water can't penetrate. So your driveways, your footprint of the house, your patios, pools, any of that takes up that surface that is not grass, that is not gravel, and that type of thing. So you can typically find this on a survey. If there's not a survey, then you're going to want to have it surveyed because those are the ones that can tell you how much you can use. So don't let people just assume because they found a random open lot that they can just build an 8,000 square foot house on every inch of this random open lot. They still have impervious surface requirements, which are typically put on by the municipality or the county. If they're in a municipality, it'll be by the town or city. If not, it'll be by the county.
Question. Yep. So if you're just looking at it and they're like, yeah, I like it, but we need to know that type of thing, you would advise them to pay to get a survey done prior to going to the contract or anything to learn about that? Like, is there a way you can find out or at least something you can look at that?
It depends. I hate to have that answer, but it depends. So typically I'm going to go to the seller and see if they know this information because the seller, if they just subdivided it out, or the seller may or may not have a survey. So if they've got a survey, I could go to the original surveyor and say, do you know what because they don't always put it on there on the survey. Do you know what the impervious for? They're either in those little keys that are like the top left or bottom right that has all this information in it. A lot of times it'll tell you what the impervious restrictions are for that particular property. Otherwise, I would do it during the due diligence process, which is frustrating. And this is why a lot of times when you get offers on land, there's not a lot of due diligence money. If you don't have a lot of information to give, you're not going to get a lot of due diligence money from me because I'm going to make sure my client and I are spending money to know that they can do exactly what they want to do on this land. And that's the conversation that I would have with the listing agent. Like, hey, I know DD is low. We'll give you some more earnest money. Or maybe we stair step it, do additional earnest money, whatever. We need to know the impervious. We need to know exactly what we can and can't put on this property. Same thing if they've not had it perk tested. That's the good and bad. So many people throw land on the market and it's not been perk tested, meaning they haven't had a soil scientist come out and say, yes, you can put a septic system on here and this is where it can go. Do not listen to a farmer who says this soil's fine. This soil's just fine. It's been fine since I've been here and since I was 5 years old. Does not matter that it's not wet when they walk on it. I have 5 acres of beautiful land. You drive 4-wheelers on it. We do all the things. Would not perk for a regular septic system. We had to get a can't think of the word. But it's a special septic system that costs about 3 times as much as a regular system, a drip system, because the guy who owned the land before us, he was bored and he had a lot of equipment and he just moved dirt from one side of the property to the other. And so when the soil scientist pulled the bore out, because I was all about this, I was like, I need to know all the things. It looked like a kaleidoscope of sand colors. There was clay, there was sand. And so it's not the same throughout to know that a septic system can drain on those soils. So don't assume either just because you have a large tract that you can automatically get a septic system on it. So that is one thing that you'll typically pay for. So if you don't know a soil scientist, get one in your phone to be able to call There are some great ones around, but they stay backed up. Also, you want to know, like we talked about, what utilities are available, and help the buyers procure that information. So we had talked about this already, setting the expectations. When you're having these conversations and you're matchmaking your people with a builder, sometimes they're going to come to you and they already have their builder, and you're like, great. So can I have can we get on a 3-way call with the builder so I can just ask some questions, some things that I need to know? Ask him, how do you do your pricing? Do you do a cost plus? Some builders will look at a plan and they're just like thumbing it and they're like, yeah, it should be about this. That drives me crazy. I call them pickup truck builders, because they usually do all their math and their accounting from the back of their pickup truck. Which is good, because these are the ones that you typically see on site every day too. They're on top of things, but they're not on top of paperwork. So if you have an engineer brain buyer, they're going to drive this buyer crazy, because this buyer is going to want to see that spreadsheet I was talking about. Not all builders are like that. It's not a problem. You just need to make sure you know, because everybody's going to be looking to you to be the accountant, the guider, the facilitator on this entire transaction. Schedule of allowances. So hopefully what I do, and I'm happy to share this, I literally have a 4-page worksheet where we go through, we sit down. I sit down my buyers before I ever put them with a builder. If they don't come to me with a builder, I sit down and have an entire consultation with them about what they are planning to build. That's going to help me know which builder they need to work with. Like I said, I had a situation and she was an accountant, if that tells you anything, and her husband was an engineer. These people loved a spreadsheet like nobody. And they wanted to build a traditional brick house. And I had one builder who love him. He does an amazing traditional brick house. He was kind of just getting started, not the most organized builder, working out of the back of his truck, but man, he was on the job every day. He was on top of it. The other builder introduced him to was more of a paper builder. They sit in the office, they sign the checks, they manage the spreadsheets, they send the subs out, they have a superintendent. That's the guy that's on site. He was very organized, very this. He had not done a lot of brick homes. That wasn't his forte. So they looked at what they could see and what felt comfortable and familiar, even though I was like, the process though, but the process, I'm telling you, is going to be what you're looking for with this builder. Regardless, I introduced them to both. We have meetings with both. They went with this builder. It was a struggle. I mean, these people were out there getting the invoice off the pile of bricks in the yard to put on their spreadsheet. I kid you not. It ended up fine, but it was just a struggle, the entire transaction. And so I like to get with my buyers. We go room by room by room. Show me your Pinterest, show me your house. Let's share a board. I want to see all these big visions that you have, because I can look at them real fast and be like, that's going to be expensive. This range you just showed me, this Viking range is $7,000. This builder needs to know that you want a $7,000 range before he creates a kitchen budget, because you know what the range budget is going to be in your kitchen? Probably 1% or 2% of the cost of your house. That's his brain is going to do automatic builder math. You're envisioning a Viking stove. If we don't have this conversation, we're going to have about a $5,000 gap that needs to be filled. And this is how people go over budget, because they don't have these conversations. So ask them, how are upgrades handled? You need to know this, especially if you have a buyer that's tight on funds, because if they want the upgrades to be paid at the time that these upgrades are chosen, this buyer is going to be writing checks throughout the transaction, and they need to be capable of that. It's also very important that you're very in touch with their lender, because the lender needs to know and is keeping track of every dollar that's going out, because they're going to be looking at their bank statements every month going, what is this $18,000 check you just wrote? And you're like, I got 2 Viking ranges. And so it's important, like I said, that you know that these things are important. Things like outdoor areas. Again, I asked, do you want a pool? Do you want an outdoor area? You know why that's it? And not all builders include those, for the record. Some builders will not touch putting in a pool because of the drama that comes with that. So we know we have to outsource that through somebody else, and we're going to try to do that at the same time of our construction. I need to know that, not only, but I need to know that for impervious reasons too, if you're going to put in a pool in an outdoor area. Okay. Everybody clear as mud on how to represent a buyer on custom building? Y'all good?
Or if they want outdoor, kitchen, whatever, that's an after the loan estimate or?
Not necessarily. If they, some people, most of your buyers are gonna wanna include everything in.
Everything,
Because it's being done at the same time. You want the concrete to be seamless. You want, you know, they don't necessarily want to, you got permits going already. You got inspections coming out at the same time. It makes it easier, but it makes our job that much harder to know that we need to navigate this. So, what other questions do we have or scenarios that you've seen come up in custom builds? Because this is a whole ball of wax in itself. I could talk about this for hours.
Since, like, with that, so the lender would be okay with paying other, contractors, say like just doing it still has to go through the.
It's gonna go through the builder, so that's something else, and that builder, when I was telling you about that cost plus, and that builder said, my percentage is this. Every time you go outside or you go over, his percentage gets added to that. Or change orders happen, which is usually another fee, and this change orders drive buyers insane, because they feel like it was only a $10, you know, or they went over their lighting budget, they wanna add a couple more lights here. Well, you gotta imagine again the why behind it. Okay, you wanna add some lights in now, we gotta stop what we're doing. We got an electrical plan that we've already got approved. We've got electricians that have given us quotes based on this electrical plan. It's not just popping in a light. It's now we've got to stop 3 different parts of the process to then catch back up. So that's why builders pay charge change orders, is because they need compensation, not just for the work, but for the time and the slowing of the process that it took.
Just one more,
Yeah.
that do changes, I know myself is building a new home and.
100%.
Right.
100%. I have never met one person that from the day we signed off to the day to close, we're like, that was it. Mm-mm.
Right.
Even the most organized ones who feel like they have thought of everything, it never fails. You get into it and you're like, you know what would have been better here? You know what we should have done right here? And then all of a sudden, that's when the shoulda questions start happening. And I'm just like, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Okay, so most people want to take this class because they want to learn about new home sales and how to work with builders and how to do all that. So we're going to start from ground level again and work our way up. So with new home sales, you better love open houses, because there ain't a builder out there who doesn't want an open house. And many of them have open house requirements, very strong open house requirements. And again, I'm going to take you back to the why. I worked for this builder. I sat in the office beside him and I saw interest checks get paid every month. They have just handed you what they feel like is a beautiful, shiny new object, and it's your job to go sell it. And if you take it and you put it in a closet and nobody ever sees it, or you're not there to tell anybody about it, that's what the builder feels like you have done. You've just put his house in a closet and you're not telling anybody about it. You're not there. You didn't meet the buyer. They didn't hear from you that he put in 4x6 walls, and they need to know that. Most buyers, unless they're custom building, don't know, don't care until you tell them that it's 4x6 walls. I promise you, they don't know how to figure that out themselves. But it's important to the builder that you know their product and that you are there to tell people about their product. So most people that want to do new construction don't understand the time and effort and energy that they're going to spend in these houses. Same thing as far as reporting and expectations. I know my builder knows I know what I'm doing. I know my builders know that we're on top of every lead that comes through. But do they still want to hear from me all the time? Yep, it does not matter. It does not matter if I've sold everything but one. I need to let him know every other day what's going on with that one. And those are expectations that you can't fault them for. They are spending money on these houses all day, every day, literally. Everybody's getting paid. Everybody's gotten paid, except them. They're like us. They don't get paid till it closes either. And then signs, photos, lock boxes. These are things that are so important. And I'm getting, okay, no part of that was gone. I don't know where the rest of what they did with the rest of my presentation, but it was there. But anyway, it's important, and you guys know this as agents that ride around and try to sell new construction. How frustrated do you get when you pull up to a house and you thought it was going to be finished, because that's the pictures that were MLS, and you get there and they just staked the lot. And you're sitting there with your clients like, so if you can imagine, you're like, imaginary walk with me. This is going to be great. So luckily MLS has been, you know,
It's so funny. Happened.
And who are the buyers blaming? You. They're not blaming the listing agent, the listing. Hey, don't blame me. I was doing my job. I was like, look at what this is gonna look like. And I put about this big somewhere. This is a rendering. This is what it's gonna be. This is a picture from another house. I put it because I wanted the buyer to see it and fall in love with it and be like, take me to it. I want to buy that. Especially when we're building houses and lots that we've already sold and we're out of inventory, but we're trying to get the ones that are coming out of the ground sold. So I know everybody wants to get frustrated with a listing agent that we do this, but it's for a reason. It's so that we are letting you know there's more coming. Not every buyer has to buy in 60, 90 days. I know most of the ones down here do. They got orders, they got places they got to be. But in the rest of the real estate world, some people have time and they're just looking for the right place, for the right floor plan, for the right community. And that's what's most important. So that is why listing agents do that. But if you're representing a builder, this is why it's also so incredibly important that you put the phase of construction in MLS at all times. So on our team, they know when the foundation goes in, we get a picture. When the framing happens, we get a picture. When the roof goes on, we get a picture. Then it gets into what we call the ugly teenager phase. And nobody wants to see any more pictures of it because there's nothing you can do to make it look good. There's dumpsters, there's trash, there's people everywhere you go out there. So it stays like this for a while. Until then it's like, okay, now we've got cabinets and we've got flooring and we've got that in. Now we want to update the pictures again because how many buyers really care about the color of their cabinets? Like it's a sticking point for a lot of buyers. And so those are the things that are most important. That's why we're putting pictures on the internet and you're like, house looks like it's still not finished. It's close enough. When you see houses like that, you got cabinets, you're within 45 days. You can typically close on a house. So this is why from the sales side, the listing side, we do this. And just to let you know, if you are going to talk to a builder about representing them, you need to be prepared to explain how you're going to manage all this. Because the agents out there like me, we've got this lock stock ready to rock. I mean, we have a whole 60, 90-day launch plan of what's going to happen with every house that they plan to build. I lost my train of thought. What questions do we have on? Well, let me go ahead and say the number one question everybody asks, how do I start working with a builder? Let me tell you what we don't do, and I learned this from my own experience. Do not cold call them. You are not the first, second, third, 40th realtor that calls them every month. One of my builders shows me the custom pies he gets from another brokerage with his logo on it. He's like, see what such and such sent me trying to get my business? And I'm like, how was the pie? I mean, do they do a lot of new construction? And one of them threw, especially during COVID. Oh, it was really bad during COVID because that's the only thing we had to sell was new constructions. They were coming for my business hard. And one of the builders called and he was like, I got an agent that they say they'll list every house for $2,000. And I said, did you sign yet? He said, no. I said, because you know as well as I do, they're not going to go check on that house every week and take pictures for $2,000. They're not going to do open houses every weekend for $2,000. They're not going to make sure you have professional photography, drone photography, all the things that we do for $2,000. They won't make $1. And he was like, I know that and you know that. So just know there are realtors out there cold calling builders all the time. If you want to start working with a builder, you have to bring them the opportunity. You bring them the land. Get to know the builders in your community. The way I got started, I was fortunate that I worked with this builder. He did not do a lot. He did about 10, 12 custom homes a year. He mainly did commercial. So, but he shoved me in all the places he didn't want to go anymore because he had me. So I went out to all the home builders meetings. I was a part of all these committees. And so when I got my first neighborhood, it was a builder I'd never worked with before. It was actually a set of builders that were brothers. One was the realtor, one was the builder, and now they both wanted to build. And they were looking for who was going to represent them in this new community. And they called me to interview. And I asked them in the interview why. And they said, we see you everywhere. You come to our broker luncheons. You're at the home builders meetings. You're here, there, and you're trying to educate people on new construction. And that's who we want representing us in our sales. And that was just a huge shot in the arm for me and my team. That's when I learned how to truly be on site. We had to be out there 7 days a week. This developer required certain color balloons. Like when I tell you, you have to learn to toe a line in new construction, I am not kidding. If they want it, they're going to get it. It doesn't. I mean, sometimes I was like, bear with me. They only had red at the store this week, but But that is how I really kind of branched out and got going in new construction. I don't know anybody in the industry. I wasn't born to anybody in the industry. I have no connections, family connections to land. You guys know how that is. It's down here just like it is up there. Most people know somebody who knows somebody. Most builders, realtors are their wives or their sister. So this is another reason you don't cold call. I did that when I was working for my builder. I was like, he's going to try to pick up a couple more in the neighborhood that we're already in because we were out selling them and I was naive and didn't have a broker to tell me not to do that. And so I just called them and they're like, well, I sure do appreciate that. But my wife is sitting right here and she says we're good. Cool. So don't make that mistake like I did. But if you got like, there's a bunch of smaller builders that I just got to know through the Home Builders Association. And one of them called me one day and they're like, hey, we're ready to start building houses. The wife had actually gone and got her contractor's license. The husband does something in construction already. And the wife got her contractor's license. They're like, we want to build a couple houses. Will you help us get started? So I've also taken the new construction sales course. There's like a designation certification. And it comes with a really great toolkit of just blank forms. They didn't have change orders. They didn't have their own builder contract. They didn't even have a schedule of what a construction schedule would look like. So I sat down with them and I was like, hey, let's do this. One of the very first builders I helped, he did his first one without me. And then the second one, he was like, you know what, I'm gonna get you involved. Because on the first one, he forgot to budget cabinets. That was a big one. That was a very big one. We won gold in the parade that year. It was a beautiful house. He didn't make hardly any money on it because he forgot he needed to budget cabinets. He ordered them, but he didn't put it in the budget. So when we set the price and he told me, I'm telling him what I think it's worth. And he was like, yeah, I got this much in it. We met in the middle with where we wanted to list it. At the end of the day, I was like, I knew something didn't look right. You forgot cabinets. And so it's really important that you are helping these builders think of everything. And so again, it was a great shot in the arm for me, for them to trust me in helping with this process. And now they're not going to be, again, he's already in construction in another area. They're not going to be a 200 a year builder, but they're going to do 12 and they're going to do 15 and they're going to call us for every one. And now sometimes they look for their own opportunities because once you start building, the developers come to you sometimes and they're like, hey, I got lots. Do you need lots? And so they'll pick up the phone, they'll call me and say, hey, we've got this opportunity. We want you to look at it. You tell us if we think we should do it. And then we're going to use you to market our home. So that's how the relationship happens. But it comes with, what can I do for you? Not what can you do for me? All right, what questions do y'all have? I feel like I've talked y'all's heads off. Yes, ma'am.
Sales, was that, where was that? Where did they go?
I want to say it was to the home builders. I'll look up, but it's new home sales. It's I'm trying to think of the designation. There's actually two different ones, and it was a husband and wife team that taught it. I can't remember. I took it at the Wake County HBA.
Okay.
So it's through the HBA that I took it. But I know that it's just out there. Certified New Home Marketing Specialist and Certified New Home Sales. CHMS.
Yeah.
CNHMS, yeah.
My brother just got insurance like yesterday. And so he looking for some land to build in Eastern North Carolina. So when Lacey told me, I didn't know until I got here what she was teaching on. And she's like,
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'll give you my cell phone number. Feel free to have them call me. And because unfortunately with general contractors, their school is just like ours. It doesn't teach them how to build a house. It teaches them how to pass a test.
Yeah.
And so if you've got somebody that hasn't have any construction background, it's very interesting. And that's one thing, the first builder and I, we looked at, I found him a random lot and I was like, let's start here. Let's start small. Here's a plan. It's a good 1,300 square foot ranch plan that I know will sell. Let's start here and we'll go from there. And literally, if you've ever, what you'll see when you look at a construction schedule is it looks like a stair step calendar, but that's vertical. And what you have to imagine is one of those lines gets off the stairs, it messes everything else up down the line. And so this is what buyers need to understand when they are building a house, how it seems like if one sub gets behind, every sub gets behind. And this was so apparent in COVID. And it wasn't the subs, it was that we couldn't get things. We would get a house framed, the roof is on, it is sitting there, it looks like, oh my gosh, walls should go up any day. Windows we could not get windows for 4 months. So a house would sit there in house wrap with a roof, looks like I'm gonna be in by Christmas. That's what the buyer sees, because now it's on vertical. And it's sitting there with no windows. You can't move on. You can't do insulation without windows. You can't start trimming, do sheetrock without windows. And so little things like that would stop us in our tracks. Breaker panels. We couldn't get electrical panels. Well, guess what? You can't start wiring all of your things without that breaker panel to lead everything to. And so it was just a really terrible storm, and builders got beat up really bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, they made good money, but it was a headache because every day it was something new. It was, we'd get to the finish line, then we couldn't get a driveway culvert. You can't get your CO without the driveway being in, the driveway culverts being in. And so again, buyers are standing on their head mad. They're calling the permitting department themselves. They're sending me every time that a permit failed or an inspection failed, and they want me to do something about it. And I'm like, guys, this is where you have to remove yourself and realize that you hired a builder for a reason. You got to let the builder do their job. Same thing. We had buyers on site this morning, one of our new construction. We agreed to clear some more trees. They're out there trying to pay the tree guy personally to clear the extra land. We're like, no. This goes through the builder. We told you this, but it was one of those where their agent didn't even ask, like we told them what to do. But anyway, their agent didn't even ask. And so the buyers just drove out there trying to pay somebody. It's like, stop, there's a process for a reason. The builder's got to pay them. We have buyers trying to say, well, I know somebody who can do sheetrock. You just need to call them. And I'm like, there's a vetting process before you work with these subs. They got to have certificate of insurance. We can't just hire your cleaning crew to come on just because ours is behind. So all of those nuances, it's important that you guys stay level-headed about, because the buyers are going to be very emotionally involved with their buy, and the builders are also very emotionally involved. They have employees that they have to feed, and they can't feed them if these houses aren't selling. So again, we literally are the middle of this like nucleus of all things new construction to keep everybody to the same page. Yes, ma'am. Oh. No. She literally even did this with her finger. This is how much we watch videos on TV. On her phone.
Okay, so you had mentioned also about how upgrades are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all I'm upgrades is that they are not potatoes. What are other potatoes?
That is typically the option.
Oh,
I have seen builders finance them, or the vendor finance them. However, I highly do not recommend this. Builders don't like to say no. They don't. And so if the buyer's like, I want this, but I can't pay for it out of pocket, can we add it into the price, is what the buyer thinks. Why can't I just add it into the price? So I had a builder who was really, really nice guy, same builder you worked with, had a pre-sale client who just went nuts. And when I mean nuts, it went from, I'm going to add this, and then I'm also going to add this, and then 3 months later, we have a sauna being installed in that house, and we have this, and we have that, and I mean, you name it, this guy went. He was having a really good time. And in his brain, it's like a credit card. He's putting it in the house. He's not seeing what he's actually adding up. And so that particular builder was a little bit newer at the time, and again, doesn't use a spreadsheet all day, every day. And so the vendors are just kind of like, hey, this guy added this, sounds good. You know, next month, another vendor's like, this guy added this, okay. And he's just putting it on their bill. Well, the house is almost finished, and we are $87,000 over budget. Guess what the house doesn't appraise for? Guess what you're not getting full value of? A sauna. That he wanted stone around. I mean, all this went nuts. And so then we have a problem, because what does the buyer think? Well, you're overcharging me for this house. It's not worth it. My appraisal says this house isn't worth it. And the builder's like, no, fancy pants. You went and put all this stuff in a house that no other house in this neighborhood has. So of course it's not going to appraise. So it was a really, it was a tough situation. And so that's why most builders make you pay, and they'll, if you want to avoid the change orders, they're like, just pay my vendor directly while you're there, and it'll just kind of all circle back towards the end.
That's a crazy, you have all your receipts, you can wrap that into the loans, you can get it back. Sometimes people get like a refund back for the same, depending on.
I had a different scenario on why they're paid up front. This lady, it was new construction. It wasn't construction of firm like that, but we were at a stage where she could still change some stuff. And they didn't make her pay for this upgraded tile that she wanted as her backsplash. And it was like orange and green. It was hideous, but who am I, right? So I'm sitting in the design center like, all right, it's okay. And they didn't make her pay for the upgrade, just put it in. She quit her job 3 weeks before we were supposed to close and couldn't close. And it ended up costing him thousands to rip it out and put it in a neutral one. And put in a new one because it's gonna walk in and fall in love with an orange and green tile and I mean, maybe somebody, but it was not cute. And so that was very early on in my this. I'm like, this is why they make you pay for it up front. This all makes sense. And now I explain that to people when they're like, why do we have to pay for it up front? This is why. You know what I mean? Like, would you want to be stuck with that? Now you have this ugly tile and you're gonna try to sell this house, you know what I mean? And he ended up ripping it out and just putting something neutral in it because he just didn't want it to sit because of it. So it all made sense to me about that specific scenario.
And so you were saying that if the home freezes, that if they keep the receipts for
Their upgrades, and we can source it, but we have to, so we store the deposit. As long as we can source it, then it can get added back into the loan, so that can go towards their like minimum investment, we had a down payment required. They didn't have any funds that they needed to put in, they can actually sometimes get all stuff back at saying. Yeah, so it gets like wrapped into the loan, we're going to qualify that immigration as well, but yeah, so. We have that. Somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, but saving the receipts is the biggest thing. Has to show proof where that kind of came from. You didn't get a loan, like you put that on a credit card, we're not gonna be able to do that. We have to source it, see, where came from your savings in order to give credit. But yeah.
Question, instead of them saving their receipt, they send it to you throughout the process.
Yeah, I would probably prefer that, because then we can go ahead and source it right away, because if it's something where. They did it 9 months ago, now we're having a bank statement for 9 months ago and try to, source it from there, so yeah, as they go.
It felt like drinking water from a fire hose. Anyone else? It felt like drinking water from a fire hose. I was like, that's simple.
Yeah, it's good.
Please eat the donuts. Do not leave me with 24 donuts to eat because I will eat all 24 of them. Please eat something. There's drinks also if anyone needs water or sodas in the fridge, just let me know. And I can grab it for you. Next week is I have my license now what? So everything they don't teach here in real estate school. I've had my license for 19 years, right behind April. I've had a lot of hats in this industry too. And I think LaShonda has been in it about 5. And so her and I together, we'll probably be teaching that class, I think so, right? Yeah, so just kind of everything they don't teach you. So come with questions if you have it, if you just got your license and be like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to say on the phone to a lead when they call. Like stuff like that is definitely a question and answer mastermind type of situation next week. And then the following week, one of our teammates who is an open house queen right behind April is doing how to maximize your open house potential. She's amazing and she will get people in your open houses. So if you're sick of going out and sitting there not getting anyone, this was a waste of time type of thing. It's the second week of February. She's awesome. And she, how to keep people, when someone comes in and you're trying to get them to put their name and phone number and they're looking at you like they just ask for your social security number, like how to make people feel comfortable in an open house and, and converse with you and stuff like that. She's a rock star at that. So that's the second week of February. So don't stop.
One other thing you wanna mention, the tag along with all of this is Turner State's, for.
Oh, yes, we are having a broker open house at Tarrant Estates,
Wednesday from 11:30
11:30.
to 2.
Excellent, do you need to know anything else?
There's Chick-fil-A, there's trees, and there's prizes.
And I'm good.
And if anybody wants to stay and hang out, I will literally do open house role play while we're in there. I love an open house. I still do them myself because there's never a time that I've done an open house that it has not resulted in something fruitful, whether it was online or whether it was somebody walking in the house. You come to my open house, we're gonna be besties whether you like it or not. So I have a couple different strategies for that. So if you come, eat the lunch, get the prizes, and I'll do some free role play in the open houses as well.
11:30.
11:30 to 2. It's floating. So just come. We'll have JSJ Homes open and Ben Stout Construction Homes open. So it's gonna be, we love Tarrant Estates.
Yeah.
Tarrant Estates, it's in Fayetteville.
Put ALBUMENT. ALBUMENT, it'll take you right there.
Nobody's parked in this back parking lot, correct? We don't, they tow.
Did they tell you?
I'm only Brack. He said he'll come get me in a minute, but I convinced him not to tow me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, you got a bracket there?
Being towed. It's on the tow truck right now. It's fine.
Ah,
It's not getting towed. He's gonna come get me in a minute. He's negotiating with everybody else that apparently do not negotiation skills.
Do you want me to go flirt? We can do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Look,
Is there any questions?
Cut off the Zoom link.
Yes, drop it. All right, well, thank y'all for coming. I'm here to hang out, answer any more specific questions that y'all have.
And please come next Wednesday. You don't